Hello and welcome to Analytics Unleashed, the satellite edition. What's a satellite? Well, a satellite is a short session that we hold quarterly between our main annual events. It's a chance to catch up and share experiences, get together again, and interact. I'm Jim Love, CIO and Chief Content Officer with ITWC, and I'm coming to you live from what we call the Jumbotron, the main viewing screen. Now, just a little orientation here. Immediately to the right or below me on some devices, you'll find the chat bot or chat box, chat bot. I've got chat bot on the brain here. Chat box. And if you have a question that you'd like to see posed to a presenter or a topic you'd like to see tackled in 2024 or a comment you want to make on what we're doing, anything you want to say, just put it in the chat box. I'm going to keep doing this all day, or the chat box. Right. So why don't you test it now, if you don't mind, just by going in and sharing where you're tuning in from. What do you want to get out of today? What most interests you? You can just add anything in. And no matter what interest you have in this, I hope you're going to find something to take away from these sessions. And there's lots of other interesting things on the platform. You should check out our award-winning podcast, Cybersecurity Today, or #trending. Don't forget to subscribe to those. And you can use the chat to ask questions, have conversations, share comments with the entire group. But if you hear something you want to share with the audience beyond our attendees, why don't you go to your favorite social media account and use the hashtag Analytics Unleashed. That's hashtag Analytics Unleashed. And before we get started, I want to do a couple of poll questions. So if you've enabled the chat box, and that would be great, then good morning and welcome to you. But if you can use that, we're going to put some poll questions out there for you, and just want to get some idea of some of the things that that you are thinking about and where you are in your experience. So we can run that poll. That'd be great. So how would you rate your knowledge in terms of AI? Okay, this is good. So a lot of people with some knowledge. Nobody says they've got a strong knowledge. There's one expert out there at least, or maybe one or more than one, and about a quarter of you are absolute beginners. That's good. You want to take the second poll? We'll just go take the next one as well. And we'll just let that go through. Okay, where are you and your company in terms of leveraging AI? That's good. So just get an idea of where you are in this. And to wait for the results in there. So if you can just come in there and just give me that, where are you? You're just looking, you're getting started, but no real post. Okay, so a lot of people getting started, but no real projects. That's great. And just looking is another one in there. Okay, and we have one final poll question for you. This is really good. So thank you very much. I think it's giving an orientation to where the audience is, and that'll help us with our approach to this. So we can just take one more poll question. I think we got one more there, and we can run that. That'd be great. We'll just get that poll question up there for you, and we'll ask you one more question. Okay, what is it you want to get out of this workshop? And we've given you a couple of the answers in there. So what would you like to get out of this workshop? And we'll just give you some time for that. Just get in there. So, and here we go. Now, okay, I'm not seeing the results on my screen, so hopefully the chat is picking this up, but I'm not getting the results on my screen for this one. So, but we'll check up with those later and see where we get to on that. So let's get started. And thanks for participating in those poll questions. What I want to take a look at is when we first put together this special Analytics Unleashed edition, we knew that generative AI was going to continue to make an impact on companies in general and analytics in particular. And when I first saw what was then called ChatGPT's code interpreter, and I watched it to take a raw file, break it down, understand what was in it, then proceed to do some analysis on the numbers, and then wait for it. It came up with some real and workable insights into the data. It was called Code Interpreter at the time. I was astonished. And we covered what it could do, a lot of what it could do on our last Analytics Unleashed. Now, the ChatGPT or OpenAI has since renamed that function with something more appropriate to the title, Advanced Data Analytics. And it points out one of the places where generative AI is about to revolutionize data analytics. Now, I cringed a little when I said the word revolutionized. We aren't trying to add to the hype. God knows there's been enough hype and drama in the past weeks on AI, but and months, I guess. But as I've watched this unfold, and I've had the ability to talk to experts and meet with industry leaders, I'm actually sincerely believing that it's not hype to say we are on the edge of an enormous transformation of our businesses and our entire economy. And while we might have to acknowledge that reality, we are on the edge of a transformation that we might not have seen in decades and maybe centuries. But we have to acknowledge that while that's going on, those of us in business have another reality as well. While we have to plan and understand that future, we still have to live in the real world of today. So what we wanted to do with this session was to cut through the noise and not to diminish the importance of generative AI, but to really focus on some insights for how we can move boldly, but realistically. So in today's session, we have a presentation from the leading research firm in the world, Gartner. And Gartner works with companies in real time to help them understand and adapt to changes in technology and business. And then that'll give you your foundation piece. And then following that, we're going to have two hands-on sessions. I'm going to lead us through some approaches that I've used to solve what is a key issue in analytics and one which will be even more critical with generative AI. And we're going to try and deal with the question, why AI projects are often doomed to fail and what you can do about it. And then following that, we're going to have real-time demonstrations of how you can start applying AI today in organizations of any size. And that'll be led by Arlo Murphy, who's our head of analytics at IT World Canada. Now, for both of these sessions, we'll be as interactive as we possibly can be. So share your comments in the chat. Let us know your thoughts and ideas. And with that, let's get going. Presenting for Gartner is Don Scheibenreif, and Don's a distinguished VP analyst in customer experience research. He's a phenomenal person, and he's very, very close to what's happening with AI in the real world and in the clients and the customer experience, in customer experience in particular. He's going to share with us Gartner's vision for the next several years. I think is a great foundation. You'll find that interesting and engaging. And I'm going to cue that presentation now.
Hello, I'm Don Scheibenreif with Gartner, and I'm very pleased to be with you here today to give you some of the highlights from Gartner's recent IT Symposium Expo opening keynote. We are finishing up right now our global series of presentations. Gartner Symposium IT Expo is our primary or our flagship conference series for IT professionals, CIOs, and other IT leaders. Our goal is to provide our attendees and our clients the advice that they need to make the right decisions moving forward. But today, I want to talk to you a little bit about AI and generative AI specifically. Generative AI is at the peak of Gartner's hype cycle. It's literally been everywhere. And the keynote this year is squarely focused on AI. And the truth is that we are at the beginning of a new era where AI is going to infuse everything that we do. The last technology this huge was back in 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone. And before that, it was 1993 with the arrival of the World Wide Web. One of the things that we wanted to communicate in this year's keynote is to get people to think about their relationship with machines, not just as tools, but how they can affect all parts of our lives, both at work and at home. So what we'd like to do is give you 4 key takeaways from the Gartner Symposium opening keynote. There's much more information available on Gartner.com, and you can even watch a replay of the entire keynote that Mary Masalio and I delivered in Orlando, Florida on YouTube, and we will be happy to provide those links. So let's jump into some takeaways from the IT Symposium keynote this year. The first one is that the human-machine relationship is fundamental to understanding AI. We have to be very mindful about our relationship with machines because they're changing. They are moving from not just being our tools to actually becoming our teammates. This is part of an evolution that's been taking place for a long time, and AI is not new, but generative AI and the associated tools has certainly sparked a lot of conversations about the role of machines in our lives. And it's asking us to think about not what machines can do for us, but what machines can be for us. Machines as teammates, but also machine as a friend, as a consultant, machine as customer even. How will those relationships change, and how will we deal with them both at home and at work? Now, when it comes to the CIO, our research tells us that about 51% of CEOs expect the CIO or other tech leader to really help the organization get the most value from investments in generative AI and AI in general. So CIOs not only have a role, they actually kind of have the role, at least for now. And the message of the keynote primarily is that we shape AI and AI shapes us. We are not just victims of the technology. We are not just sitting back waiting for things to happen. We all individually and as organizations, both public and private sector, have a role to play in how AI is incorporated into our lives, both at home and at work. The second thing we wanted to communicate is that there are two flavors of AI, what we call everyday AI and game-changing AI. Everyday AI and game-changing AI are part of a spectrum of technologies in what we call the AI opportunity radar. When we think about opportunities on how to deploy AI in the organization, you can think about it in this way. Everyday AI and game-changing AI, which I'll explain, but also do these technologies, are they external facing to your customers or citizens, or are they internal, which is about your back office operations? We've split this radar into four main opportunity zones. On the left-hand side, which is what we call everyday AI, which is focused on productivity, there are activities or applications of the technology in the front office and the back office. And when it comes to game-changing AI, which is about creativity, there are opportunities to create new products and services, but also dramatically improve your core capabilities as an organization. Now, according to Gartner research, over 77% of CIOs and tech leaders are focused on the opportunities of everyday AI. These are all happening today. If we think about Microsoft Copilot, Google Workspace, ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, there are many different applications of generative AI that we're actually using today and are being integrated into many of the technology platforms we use at work every day. We expect that most organizations will be focused on exploiting those opportunities to use this technology to improve their productivity and to serve customers better. For example, we uncovered a company in New Zealand called Yabble, which is basically a generative AI solution that sits on top of your own proprietary data. You can use this to ask questions of your own data, maybe even help you develop a SWOT analysis. So this would be considered back office of the everyday AI part of the radar. For example, let's say that you were a sales leader trying to figure out what the growth drivers were for this particular quarter. This is a question or a prompt you could ask Jen, which is the AI assistant offered by Yabble, and it can provide you some answers to that question, as well as others based on your own proprietary data. If we think about everyday AI opportunities and the top left side of the AI opportunity radar, we think about front office opportunities. And a great example of this comes from Denmark. A company called Be My Eyes introduced something called Be My AI. This essentially is an application to help visually impaired people see. How this works is that if you're visually impaired, you could use this application to take a picture of the contents of your refrigerator. The system uses GPT-4 to power a image to text translation, so it can tell you the contents of your refrigerator, but more importantly, it can also suggest recipes that you can use those ingredients for, and also how to cook the ingredients so you can prepare your own meal. So a great example of how innovative organizations are using generative AI to make a difference with their customers. Now, the one message we really wanted to communicate to organizations is that while everyday AI seems pretty cool, everybody's going to be using it. So it won't be a source of competitive advantage. Just because you're using it and you're getting great results from IT and HR and marketing, all of your competitors will be doing the same thing. Everybody will be trying to get their own benefits from everyday AI. So while many people will be experimenting with it, you can't rely on everyday AI to provide long-term sustainable competitive advantage. To get sustainable competitive advantage, this is where we talk about the game-changing aspect of the AI opportunity radar. These technologies are used for creativity, not just productivity. And this is where you can use AI to change the game for your organization and maybe even your industry. For example, in Silico Medicine, a pharma startup out of Hong Kong, they actually use AI to identify new types of molecules or drugs for the pharmaceutical market. They've been able to identify 9 different new drugs using AI, several of which have made it to phase 1 clinical trials. The average pharma company will spend billions of dollars and probably nominate 4 to 5 drugs a year. So in silico is definitely changing the game when it comes to drug discovery in the pharma industry. In education, which would be the top right part of the radar, which is about new products and services, Khan Academy, which is the well-known online education service, they actually have introduced Khanmigo, which is their generative AI version of their application of generative AI in the education industry. Now, what's interesting about this application is that it basically can give you hints to let's say, a very difficult math problem without telling you the answer. And you can also have conversations with different characters. For example, Madame Curie, if you want to learn about radiation, or even talk to Gandalf if you had questions about Lords of the Rings. So Khan Academy is using generative AI to really take education to the next level and change the game in that industry. There are many examples that Gartner's been collecting, but these are the few that we talked about in the opening keynote. The truth is that most organizations are planning on full adoption of generative AI within the next 3 years, according to our research. Now, whether that's going to be primarily everyday AI, but you can bet that a few organizations will be looking beyond everyday applications and think about how these technologies can change the game. Just know that when you're in the game-changing space, it gets a lot more expensive, a lot riskier, and you'll need a lot of executive patience, but the rewards could be pretty amazing. The third key message we'd like you to take away here is that every organization needs to define its own AI ambition. It also needs to be governed by what we call lighthouse principles. This is very, very important. We've seen recently in the news how the lack of governance can impact organizations, i.e. OpenAI. We want to make sure that as clients and as organizations that are engaged in AI can actually follow some of these lighthouse principles to be able to govern your own use of the technology. Because in reality, most organizations really have to think about their opportunities for AI. How will you use this technology? What won't you use the technology for? These are all important questions you'll have to consider when thinking about AI in your organization. So one of the things that we do recommend is to use this AI opportunity radar to start to think about and plot some of the opportunities your organization may use AI to support your business strategy, the mission of your public sector organization, or merely just for experimentation. What's surprising to us is that in our research, only 9% of CIOs and tech leaders actually have an AI vision statement in place. And even more frightening is that 36% have no plans to create one. We think that creating an AI vision statement, an AI ambition statement, whatever you want to call it, is critical because it will help you govern your activities with AI. Because technology disruptions often lead to governance disruptions, as we've seen in the news recently. So don't fall into that trap. One of the ways to think about governance is use what Gartner calls lighthouse principles. These are principles that help light the way when things are murky or unclear. And they are very helpful in having an organization think about, again, what will we use this technology for and what lines will we not cross? An example of a lighthouse principle for IT might look like this. Whenever you're buying user-facing AI software, don't just buy it, interview it. Ask it, what are its goals? Check the accuracy of its answers. Interview it as if you were interviewing a teammate. Because as I mentioned earlier, machines are moving from becoming not just our tools to our teammates, and certainly AI software falls into that bucket. And then the fourth principle that we wanted to, a key message we wanted to share is that if your data is not ready for AI, then you're not ready for AI. I know the theme of this virtual event is Analytics Unleashed, and obviously analytics can't work without data. But when we surveyed organizations, 96% of them told us that their data is not ready for AI, only 4% are, which is a problem because if your data is not ready, then your ability to tap into some of the opportunities that AI offers will be limited. But what is AI-ready data? One of the main things we talked about in the keynote. It's secure, obviously. It's enriched. It's fair. It's accurate, and it's governed by lighthouse principles that you will have developed for your organization. Now, the other thing about data is that we've all been taught to believe that our mountains of data are actually mountains of gold. But in truth, it's actually fool's gold. Not all of it matters. We instead are encouraging organizations to focus on making that data that is essential to your AI ambition ready for AI. And that includes your algorithms, your formulas, your blueprints, your schematics, and any type of data that's really proprietary to your organization. That is the real gold when it comes to AI. So you don't have to make all of your data ready for AI, just the stuff that serves your AI ambition. Now let's double click a little bit about enriched data. Enriched data is data plus rules plus tags. A number of our clients have told us that the metadata is almost as important as the data itself when it comes to AI. There's actually a fancy term for this. It's called neurosymbolic AI, and it's really important. This means, for example, factory robots don't just need data. They need to be taught the laws of physics so they can operate safely in a factory environment. In finance, for example, an AI needs to be taught the rules of accounting. And in the legal profession, AI that's helping lawyers must be taught the rules of law. So data is not going to be enough for AI. We also have to think about how it's enriched with rules and tags. Now, a great example of this comes from the Page Group. They're a recruiting firm in the UK, and they have the task of writing thousands of job descriptions at any one time to fill the jobs that they have to fill. Now, normally, this takes a human recruiter 20 to 90 minutes to write a job description, but generative AI has done it in 5 minutes. And while that's cool, that's not the full story. Actually, when a human tried to write a job description, they had to consult 4 different databases to be able to write it. What they did over a period of time, this is about 2 years of work, they actually weaved those 4 different data sources into a single data fabric. And it layered a generative AI on top of that large language model and basically taught the model the rules of writing good job descriptions. So it's not just about the data, it's not just about generative AI, but those things have to be taught. And because they invested all of that time and money, every time a job description is created in 5 minutes, it pays dividends for the Page Group. So this is an example of how AI-ready data is critical to getting the value that you need from using generative AI. Now, in the keynote, which you'll see that we have research in the video itself, we actually even talk about a few more things, but unfortunately we don't have time to go through that today. But just to kind of recap what we talked about so far, the human-machine relationship really underpins our position on AI at Gartner. We want people to carefully think about what role machines will play in your organization and even for you personally as you think about using this technology. We believe the CIO can be the guide for the executive team when it comes to AI and also be part of the team that helps govern its use. We also believe that you have to choose your AI ambition. What do you want to use this technology for? What will it do for you and what won't it do for you? Use that AI opportunity radar to help organize and discuss where the opportunities are for your organization or public sector group to be able to use this technology for your own purposes. And then being AI ready is not just about principles and data. We also talk about security in the broader work in the keynote itself. So to kind of summarize, the human-machine relationship is really important. It's the story that most people miss because AI is not just a technology and it's not just a business trend. It's actually a fundamental shift in that relationship between humans and machines. And when we think about your relationship with machines, both as a leader and as a person, we have to think about this blank space and blinking cursor are waiting for you to fill it in. What do you want this technology to mean for you? What do you want it to do for you? How will you use it responsibly? Because we believe at Gartner it's up to all of us to safely unleash the possibility of AI and this technology. And we are urging our clients and everybody to help shape AI as AI shapes us. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Gartner research on generative AI, we have a resource center on Gartner.com. And then we also have some additional links that we'll be happy to provide the conference to help you learn more. So with that, on behalf of my colleagues at Gartner, I'd like to say thank you for your time and attention today. I hope you have a good conference, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I was following at least some of the comments. That's a great start for our session. And for anybody who's interested, I think Don's got some links and some backup material. We'll make sure we publish that to you. Watch for our follow-up email from the show, and you'll get those things in it. And again, I'll keep reminding you, keep those comments coming. We watch them as best we can as we're trying to do the other things in the show and try and keep in line with what you want to get out of these sessions. So we'll love your comments as we go through, and we'll have some Q&A at the end for those who want to hang around. So if you want to put your questions into the chat as you think of them, that's great too. Or if not, save them for the end. Okay, we promised you we talk about pitfalls and why people are going to fail at AI and analytics. And no, we don't want to admire the problem. We also want to give you some tools and ideas to show how you can succeed. And I'm just going to take a second now, if I can. I'm just going to switch over, and I'm going to walk through a little bit of a presentation with you of some of the things we've been working on. And hopefully these will be helpful to you. So I'm just going to go into share my screen. Hang on a second. We'll share the screen, PowerPoint. And I hope you all can see that. I can't see it, but you can, hopefully. And the topic of my presentation, I'm going to do this. I'm going to move through this at a fairly good clip. If there's any problems with that, and I'll just take another look. I'll just make sure I check the chat. If I'm going too fast or too slow, let me know in the chat. But what I want to talk about is why companies will fail at AI and what you can do about it. And who am I to talk about that? For a number of years, I headed up a research group that did nothing but look at why companies didn't get the results they wanted from IT investments. And this has been puzzling people for years. But some of what I'm going to tell you is going to sound really obvious in some cases, I think. Because here's a hint. When we say, why do you fail? It's rarely the technology. When I started out 40 years ago, and I really have been doing this for 40 years, we hit the limits of what tech could do many, many times. That's not the case anymore. We're hitting the limits of what we can do to adapt to the technology. And part of it comes in with how we approach it. And I'm going to share some people with you that you might have met and their approaches to technology. There's the convert, the person who's got it and they're going to go with this. And this is the biggest thing. It's going to be wonderful and all that sort of stuff. By the way, all of these pictures are generated by AI, ChatGPT in particular. But so, we all met the convert, right? And who's the convert in this era? It's the person who's talking about things like, and this was a real ad, and I don't know if you remember how quickly this came and went. Prompt engineers were going to be needed, and they were going to make $300,000 a year in there. Well, how many prompt engineers do you know? And so what does the convert do? What does the convert attitude do? It messes with the real true dynamics of implementation of any new software program. We talked about Gartner. Gartner has a thing they call the hype curve. And the hype curve follows the trend of just about any new and invasive or particularly novel technology. And it says, you get an innovation trigger. It starts at the beginning, and then it gets hyped up to the point where, that's why it's called the hype curve. It gets hyped up to the point where nothing could possibly meet those inflated expectations. And then people are stumbling with it, trying to meet those, and they fall very rapidly into what Gartner calls the trough of disillusionment. And the trough of disillusionment is a terrible place to be, but it's also the start of a realistic and climb out of this to actually implement a technology and get its true benefits. And you can follow this pattern through just about anything. And you'll see that they do. They have all kinds of things that they're tracking with this from, all kinds of different aspects of it. But generative AI right now, top of the hype curve. So that's one personality. The second one is the cynic. And the cynic is the one who's just like, I don't believe in this stuff. This is garbage. And they're always looking for things like, what's the problems that we're going to find? And you can see them with the problems. In generative AI, you'll just hear people talk about all the time, oh, it's errors, it hallucinates, it does this, it does that. And, and you don't have to, when I first started on the internet, I remember hearing one partner at a major firm I was with say, I don't believe in the internet. Well, the internet didn't believe in him either. The cynic personality doesn't get you anywhere either. The reality is that you may think that AI is full of it. You may not believe in it. You may not, but the real common wisdom of people, not me, but CEOs of companies, people who are working on this, the best minds in the industry, not the salespeople trying to sell you AI, but the best minds in the industry will always tell you this, and this has become a common phrase. Whether you believe in it or not is irrelevant. You're not competing with AI. You're competing with someone who will be using AI. And that should be an eye opener for all of us. And then there's a third personality that enters into this. And these are the ones that are just in denial. It's that I can't cope with this. This is not going to happen. I just can't deal with this. And I'll wait until this thing settles down and everybody's got it figured out, and then we'll get it on board. And the problem with that is this. And I'll give you this example. This is an example from a technology launch. If some of you might be too young to recognize what these pictures are. There was the BlackBerry, and it was the dominant phone that everyone in business used. And then along came the iPhone and took over overnight, right? No, it didn't. Actually, it didn't. Here's what happened. And if you watch this, the iPhone was launched in 2007, and it didn't do a lot of things very well. It didn't have cut and paste. It had an on-screen keyboard that people just couldn't figure out. And through that, from 2007 to 2010, BlackBerry remained dominant. And it was the fastest growing phone. These stats are in millions of devices. And as a matter of fact, just before the failure, I was talking with a senior vice president at BlackBerry, and they were seeing orders just rising and rising. And I asked them, aren't you worried about the iPhone? They said, Jim. Said, we've got more orders coming in this quarter than we've ever had, and we've got more coming up. And that's the problem. How did this thing that was cute, some people would say overhyped, the people who are your cynics would say, it's not that great. But how did it take over? And I put this into it, think small. And that's where, these great personalities, whether you're the enthusiast or, the convert, whether you're the cynic, these personalities don't contribute to anything in terms of moving forward. What contributes to us moving forward is this. And I know this is going to sound obvious, but I wish that everybody in analytics could have this tattooed on their arms so you could see it all the time. I've seen people running off with technology, and I'm not criticizing, but you see it all the time, people running off with technology in search of a problem for that technology. They got a great idea that we should be able to find a problem for that. What you want to focus on, especially in the early stages when you're thinking small, when you're at the bottom of that line, problems somebody really wants solved, not problems you think should be solved, problems somebody really wants solved. And then focus on delivering incremental, measurable results. If you watch, or listen to Sam Altman, who really was one of the driving forces, and is, again, one of the driving forces behind OpenAI, he'll say the same thing. Progress is incremental. And so if you take that as your mantra through this whole thing, you can cut through these different personalities and you can get to measurable results. How do I know? I've done it. So how? Well, take this list. Identify problems somebody wants to solve. Find some measurable opportunities, not just one, but a couple. Rate and prioritize them. So make a list, brainstorm, rate and prioritize them. And then build the minimum viable processes or proofs of concepts that you can work with that will show results. And then you implement them, you monitor them, and you measure them. And once you've done that, you celebrate your success or learn from your failure and be blunt about that. But if you follow those steps, you'll follow the best practice and the theories of people who actually get stuff done, even in times of great turmoil. So find a problem what somebody wants to have solved. How do you do that? Well, I take a look, and I created this model just to take a look at a company. And I put, you'll see on the left-hand side, I just put the departments of the company down. And then I had in the center column, I said, I'm going to brainstorm all of the things that these that are done in common, that are the common tasks that are done. And then on the right-hand side, just for each one, I'm going to find some specific items that are in there. And that was the first piece. It's just create yourself a model where you're not looking to try and run out and find a solution. Create a model of what you're dealing with. So this is an average small or medium-sized company, or even a large company in there. So what do we do all the time? We do a lot of meetings and minutes. We do research. We do analysis. We make decisions. We develop and publish procedures. We answer questions. We all deal with email and information overload and repetitive tasks and processes. And in some other departments, you can have some more specific things. And we're going to focus on human resources here, not because we've done some solutions on that, but you can check with the other ones. What does human resources do a lot of? Hiring and onboarding, training and orientation, answering questions on policies and benefits. So we've got that model. And once you've got that model, find things in there that bother people, that have measurable consequences or outcomes. Don't go after something that you want to solve because it's a wonderful thing to do. Find something that's got a measurable consequence. Does it take up a lot of time? Does it take up time from key resources? Now, it doesn't have to take up a lot of time, but if it's taking up a lot of time, but if it's taking a key resource in there, does it have small savings but a high volume? Does it do something people just hate to do? Unpleasant, boring, and repetitive things. Does it have, or can you affect something that has errors and quality issues, particularly when they affect clients, customers, or even other employees? Is it time sensitive? Does it must be done in a certain time? Does it have waste attached to it? Time, money, resources in there? Or ultimately, does it have cost savings? And that's what you want to look for in all of those things and say, can I find places where there are measurable consequences and outcomes from things that I could, we could improve them, we would do better. And then we introduce this thing called generative AI. And I'll just go back to my model because I want to remind everybody what generative AI does. It's very simple, but it's very powerful. And what it's really good at is guessing the next thing, doing textual analysis and guessing the next thing. It's also expanding its way into visuals and things like that. But this is the heart of it, is predicting the next thing. So when it sees Sly as a, if your brain went fox, then you're operating under the same terms as generative AI. What I'm saying is, this is not a miracle. This is not a conscious being. This is something that is very good at predicting and analyzing language as it does that. So what it does well, content creation, not surprisingly, language understanding, personalization, understanding what people what's logical for people. It has a great conversational interface in natural human language. And this is the thing that people just love about this. But it can also do data augmentation, because if it has a whole pile of data, it's pretty good at predicting what the next thing should be. It's also good at recognizing patterns and making predictions. It's great at automating repetitive tasks if it always can predict what the next thing to do is. And the thing that it gives us, and this last thing about the conversational interface that it's so great with, and the way it can analyze immense amounts of text, it's faster to develop than any other AI, machine learning or anything like that. This is where people are really starting to look at, how you can use this. And it's even great it'll even surpass many programming approaches. And last, anybody can use it. Now, the problems with it. So those are the pluses. So if we're looking to solve these problems, there's some of the things that we got working in the plus column there. What are the negatives? You can't always trust its accuracy. It doesn't, and that's a fair comment. It doesn't give you the same answer twice. It's not like a program where you always get the same answer. It will give you a different answer each time in many cases, because it's predicting it. The way it works, it's predicting what the next logical thing is. Any minor variation could send it off into something else. And for that reason, and I hate this word hallucination, because it's not hallucinating. It is just getting on a wrong thread. And it starts to predict the next step and the next step and the next step. And you know yourself, if you get off on a wrong step, and you keep following that path, you're going to end up being in error, or what they'll call a hallucination. So it always has to be supervised and checked. Very powerful, does a lot of things, but has to be supervised. So let's go back to our model, and we say, what do we find? We for our example today, we said the human resources, and there's some stuff that people do all the time. It's repetitive. It takes up a lot of time, and that are some of the things we're going to look at. Now, for those of you who don't remember Meatloaf, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'm not going to grab one thing to work on. I'm going to grab 1, 2, or 3. I think a minimum of 3. I sometimes work with 3 or 4 things. And why? Because you can fail at a couple of them. You can win at one. And you'll be ahead. You'll have a couple alerted. So putting all your eggs in one basket, not a good idea with new projects. So I try to find 2 or 3 things that I'm going to work on and see how well they do. And how do I find those things? I again drew a little model for myself, and I do this all the time. And you'll find out how, when you start to work with these types of models, they're very simplistic, but they start to make you think clearly about things. And I just said, I'm going to create a graph with a likelihood of success going from low to high, and with the size of the reward being going low to high. And I'm going to take, and those yellow things are things I've written on sticky notes, and I'll put them on the wall. And there'll be different projects. I can do this thing. 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 And I'll try and put them in there. What's the real likelihood of success? I'm asking myself honesty. What's the size of the reward? And I'll put them together in there. And the top, I put some explanations in there. What makes it a high likelihood of success? Well, the problems are understood. There's best practices. It's measurable. You've got agreement on causes. And this one is tremendous. You got a real support for getting a solution. People really want to get it. Or there's consequences for inaction. Or, like I said, some things, they may be minor, but they happen all the time, and they're just a million paper cuts taking your resources, and people are very grateful when you can solve those things. What makes something a low likelihood of success? If it's not well understood, if it takes a lot of analysis, if it's difficult to measure, if there are no consequences for inaction, or if it happens infrequently, or if there's low support for a solution. People don't really want, they don't really commit to a solution. So that's the first piece. I'll try and prioritize those and find one, two, or three. Now I'm going to understand the process and the problems. Now these are wordy slides, and I put them up there because I really wanted to show you the notes I'm actually working with. I'm going to sit down and say, here's one that I think came off my list: hiring for new contract employees. Why? It's businesses do a lot of it. It has to be done at a certain time. The quality of it matters. Reading resumes is just soul destroying and takes forever. And so it had a lot of those factors in there. And I thought, as I looked through what ChatGPT could do, I said, this one's got a pretty good likelihood of success, and it's got consequences. So what I did then was just sat down and I interviewed myself on this, but you could do an interview or conversation with people. And I said, what do we do? Get job description, you create a job posting, you get resumes in, you communicate with the candidates, you interview, you get a final decision. I listed those out. And then I actually went back and said, hey, can I find out the problems in here? And I've highlighted these in yellow. How long do things take? What are the errors that are in there? You'll take a look at 3. And I know I accept these are wordy, but I really wanted to share just my own notes with you. The resume submission and going through this can take, I don't know, a day, 2 days, and you get tons of unqualified resumes. They come in different formats and styles. So just this one piece alone could be a core in there. And there's other problems in there. Do we have are we asking the right questions? Are we getting the right people? Are we doing these interviews correctly? So there's lots of problems in here, and they all have consequences, and I can measure them. I can go ask how long it takes to do this. What's the consequence of getting this wrong? So now I've got something to work from. So I took these notes, and this is the notes regarding the hiring practice. And I use contract programmers and analysts in there, and these people who have to do this constantly. And I said, please review and identify the key issues and make some suggestions for how we can improve this. And here's my notes. And I came up with some suggestions for improvement. And these are just brainstormed. And in this particular case, I will tell you, I went to ChatGPT and said, brainstorm these and give me some ideas of what the problems are and what clarify. You don't have to only go to GPT, but you could go to people who are affected by this and get some ideas for each one of these things. Here's an issue, here's a suggestion, here's an issue, here's a suggestion. You don't need only one suggestion. You may need more than one. And now you've got some ideas for things you can fix that people think are the things that should be fixed, where you've got measurable results, and where you've got 2 or 3 things that you can follow, or 2 or 3 potential projects you can follow to see if you can get a result. I always like to chart these things down so I get a flow chart and get a line of how things move through this, so I can get a sort of a conversational line. Inputs, this person inputs the job requirements. This person processes them. This person reviews and approves them. They post the job on various sites. People submit resumes. These are the candidates submitting resumes, and some ideas where things loop back and forth. The person gets this, they send out a communication, and so on through the process. By the way, I also did this using ChatGPT, a thing called Show Me, and it does process diagrams. Wonderful to play with. You could do this on your own as well, though. And the last piece, and most important, measurable and provable outcomes. You want to start with agreeing on 2 things: the outcomes that people would like to get and how you measure them. And so that's a very important thing. If you try and measure at the end, you will not get the same result. You need to get a measurable and provable outcomes that you're seeking, and you have to get an agreement on how you're going to measure success from the beginning. And here's some language you might want to try using. We always say things are improved. Well, how much is it improved? That's an opinion. And so you can do all this work and get somebody's opinion on whether this is better or not. You want things that are measurable. If you use these 5 words: medic, maintain, eliminate, decrease, increase, or create, if you use those words, they will force you to get measurable outcomes. Try it. So the questions you want to ask: what is success? How's it measured? What are the current measures of the problem? And benchmarking it when you start is, because people get very fluid and they remember things differently. No, it takes you a half an hour to do this. I want to know that. It takes you a full day to do this. And you don't need exact, but you need people to commit to the current measures of the problem. And then what would you call success? And, we always try to do this in absolutes. That don't fall into that trap. What would you call success? It takes you 8 hours now. What would you call success? If I got you 25% of that time back, would that be great? If I got you 50%, would that be really great? So what would you call success and how would we measure it? Now you've got something to work with. And again, now I'm going to go back to my graph and I'm going to say I'm going to pick a couple of projects in there. And I picked one in there in particular, and that was that recruitment piece. And how did I create the application? I started a conversation. And this is where ChatGPT and other generative AI, and I've worked with ChatGPT particularly, but there are other generative AIs out there, and I'm not going to prescribe which one to take. There are different reasons why you use different ones. But we start a conversation with it. And this is how easy it is. Once you can describe the problem conversationally, anybody can build the solution. And that's part of the magic. If I would hate to call it magic, but that's part of what you can do. And GPT Builder, you could always do this with prompts, but they've really upped their game on GPT Builder. It says, I'll help you build a new GPT. And that GPT is an app that will do the thing you want it to do. And it'll make some suggestions. Then you just talk to it. And this was my conversation. It says, hi, I'll help you. I need, here's some of the things. Do you want help with? And it says, what would you like to make? And I says, I'd like to make an application that can evaluate candidates for hiring. And again, you got to love it. GPT Builder says, great. Let's name this. Well, how about hiring helper? Do you like that? Oh, it says, great. Hiring helper is a great name in there. And so, and then it says, well, here's a picture that you can use. And we had a great chat about the pictures. We didn't end up taking this one, but we ended up in a conversation about this. Now, and I then talked about some of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that our process was gender neutral. In the picture for hiring helper, I wanted to keep this in the HR realm of being open and all of that. Then it started to ask me some questions. Considering the role in evaluating candidates, what specific tasks or features would you like to focus on? And what should hiring helper focus on? And I created this prompt. And this prompt is just me telling a story. I'd like it to help me develop a job description. I'd like to help create job postings for online job forums. I'd like to help to develop a set of evaluation criteria so I can analyze the resumes. And when it analyzes them, I want them to evaluate them against this criteria and allow me to shortlist. And I've given it some categories I wanted to shortlist in. But the cool thing I wanted to do is I wanted to find people who are absolutely suited and matched every criteria. Then I want you to find some that are a close match, where they've got things they may not be exactly what we want, but they're an indication that this person could be a great candidate in there. And then category 3, show promise, and category 4, reject. And probably not. So now I'm going to sort through them. And I wanted to store all of those positions. I wanted to be able to help the user decide which, categorize all of these things. And I wanted to provide some other pieces in there. And that was really my whole piece. That led to hiring helper. So hopefully that gave you something in the way of a process. And again, we could share this presentation with you. I'm not kidding. I know some of this sounds obvious. I've worked in some of the biggest companies in the world taking this same approach to problems and come out with solutions that people developed that they wanted solutions to. And I can also adapt to some didn't work, some did work, some only partly worked. But we got a feeling of progress and we were able to learn from it. And from that, I turned this over to Arlo Murphy. Now, Arlo is our head of business intelligence here, and he's used to getting these ideas from me. And Arlo's that quiet background guy who spends a lot of time analyzing our data, and not just analyzing it. He's got to make applications from this. And I'm just going to get out of this, and I'm going to bring Arlo back here. So I stop sharing, and maybe Arlo and I can hook up in this thing, or we can bring him in as well. So, but Arlo's has the person who will work on the actual actionable insights for this data, and he's done a lot of work in this. So I'm going to bring him in, and Arlo, you're going to walk people through some of the things that you've done, maybe a little bit on my helper application here.
Yep.
And I'm going to let you take over and walk through this. So we've set the stage with everybody about how you can develop your ideas. And now, can you show us how we can turn these into solutions? Well, they shrunk you. Oh, no, you're back to my height. There you go. I'm going to leave you on to this. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so what we're going to do now is we've seen sort of the theoretical end, and now we're going to do, I'm going to do more of a practical hands-on demo of how you can actually use ChatGPT in order to deliver the sorts of value that Jim has been talking about. So we have been spending a lot of time experimenting with AI and ChatGPT in particular, and we're trying to see what use cases actually add the sorts of value that Jim was talking about versus the ones that are seem cool but maybe don't actually deliver on what you're hoping. We're going to walk through a few use cases that are that we think have really got a lot of potential to deliver. And we're doing it in the HR area because, as Jim was saying, we have, everybody has to hire people. So it's a use case that everybody is going to be able to relate to. What I want to do to start with is talk about the actual structure of these custom assistants. Jim introduced custom assistant for being the hiring helper. I'm going to show you how these custom assistants actually work in order to be able to do what you want to do. To share my screen here for us. All right, so first off, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I'm calling regular old ChatGPT from the good old days of a couple of months ago, where basically you talked to ChatGPT, you asked it a question, it gave you an answer. It had insights that it got from the entire internet, so it had lots of knowledge to draw from, but at the same time, it didn't know anything specific about your case. Right? It didn't know anything about your company. It didn't know anything about what you need. And if you wanted to provide it information on what you specifically need, you had to add that into your prompt as you went along, which works, but it takes a long time, and it would often forget stuff, and it ended up being more prone to the hallucinations that Jim was talking about. ChatGPT has added in a lot of features over the last few months that deal with this to a great degree and makes the tool much more useful for very specific use cases. So this is where we're at right now. Basically, it's not just you asking questions and having ChatGPT look out into the universe and come up with answers based on everything. You are able to customize it in a number of different ways, and you're able to give it specific instructions. Jim showed us a little bit about that. It has a bunch of different capabilities in terms of being able to do the data analytics, as well as all of the images that Jim showed before were created using ChatGPT's capabilities. A new thing that we have is knowledge, and knowledge is going to be basically information that your specific assistant needs to do what they're doing, and that means that you have, the information that it's working with is controlled. It's exactly what you want. It's the documents that you want. And we'll go into this as we go along. And the last thing that it has is the ability to interact with other software. And this allows you to create what are called custom assistants. Custom assistants are much more task specific. So rather than having one GPT that you ask questions for and it gives you back information, you can have separate assistants for separate tasks. We're going to talk about two The first one Jim mentioned, which is our hiring assistant. And hiring is very task specific. It needs specific types of information. For instance, your company's policies on who you want to hire, how you structure these documents, etc. It needs customized expertise because you have to be able to come up with appropriate interview questions, and it's going to need a customized manner of communicating. So I just want to walk through basically how this all works. In terms of instructions, these were introduced relatively recently, but where you were able to create what was called custom instructions for your GPT, which basically told the GPT what they are, which is useful if you want to get the right response. For instance, if you tell the GPT you are an HR expert who specializes in new hires, then rather than looking at the entire universe to figure out what they should say or what sort of recommendations they should make, it knows to only look at the corner of the universe where they get information from HR experts. So it makes their insights much more precise. The other thing, though, that instructions do is they can tell you how to deal with all of these other things. So you have pieces of knowledge. How do you deal with these pieces of knowledge? You have capabilities. It can tell you how to deal with these capabilities. So one example of this that is interesting is you can set up a set of instructions so that if you want all of the images, we saw the images that Jim got from ChatGPT, some of them were photorealistic, some of them were cartoony. If you want them to always be the same, you can set up instructions that say, when you get images, make them this format always. So that gives instructions to your tools so that they do what you want, how you want it for this specific task. We are going to have for our HR assistant, we've told it that it's a highly experienced HR professional. We've told it how to follow up on specific requests. So you'll see that when we go through, but when we ask for particular types of things, the assistant knows, oh, if you want this sort of thing, then you're going to need to tell me this. The other thing is we can give it instructions as to how to comply with company policies. And we'll show you again an example of that where if you ask it to do something that is against company policies, you can have instructions saying, hey, no, we're not allowed to do that. The capabilities are basically the three major plugins that come with ChatGPT. One of them is DALL-E, which creates the images. The second one is web browsing, which allows you to go to web pages and analyze them. And the third one is the one that we're using today mostly, which is this advanced analytics feature. It'll let you analyze data, upload and analyze data from a bunch of different formats, spreadsheets, etc. Most of what we're going to do is analyze resumes which come in, Word or PDF format. The next thing to look at is knowledge. Knowledge is actually really very interesting. One of the problems with the original ChatGPT is that it didn't remember anything from conversation to conversation. That is still true. ChatGPT doesn't remember things from one conversation to another conversation, but if you provide it with knowledge, that is knowledge that it can leverage no matter which conversation you're in. This knowledge is assistant specific, so if you have a hiring a hiring assistant, which is the first one that we're going to look at, you need to know the things that you need for hiring. The second assistant we're going to look at is for current employees. And for current employees, if you're building a chatbot, which is what we're going to do for current employees, then there's different types of information you need. You need to have your employee handbook, you need to have benefits packages and all of this stuff. So it's different knowledge for different assistants. And because we're doing an HR tools today, we have an org chart for the company. We have an employee handbook. We have a safety and health guide. We have diversity and inclusion policy. We have employment benefits. We have grievance policies, all of the typical HR type documents that people are going to need to have. And the last thing is what are called actions. And actions are basically how your assistant interacts with other software. Up until very recently, these were plugins, and there were a bunch of different plugins that you would get directly within ChatGPT. It is now done via Zapier. You just need a free account from Zapier, and then you can get your custom assistant to do literally anything that Zapier let you hook stuff up for. We're just going to look at sending an email. We're going to look at making a calendar invite, but basically anything in Zapier's list of 50,000 possible actions, you can get ChatGPT to do that. Now, one thing I will say is that configuring actions is a little bit clunky. You basically need these two accounts. You need to make sure that they can talk to each other. You need to set up the actions. It's a bit of a process, but it's not. It's a little bit of a hill to go over, but it's not a mountain you can't overcome. Yeah, so our custom HR assistant knows how to set appointments and send emails. That's basically all that we needed to do. But you can set them up to, make notes for Evernote. You can have it create items for your to-do list, etc. So this is just what it looks like inside of ChatGPT. So this is the hiring helper that Jim was talking about before. We've got instructions. We've got what are called conversation starters, which is basically the prompts that you start off with. We've got knowledge. Here we have a few of the documents that I've uploaded. All right, so that is basically the first part, the theoretical part of what I wanted to talk about. Now we're going to get into the exact use cases. I'm going to leave my presentation here and start going directly into ChatGPT and showing you how this works. So this is my hiring helper. Make that bigger so that we can see. And now, so the first thing, we're going to do basically three parts to the use case of hiring a person. The first thing that we need to do is create a job description for for the job that we want to hire for. The second thing, once we've gotten that job description, sent it out, and gotten resumes, we need to review and shortlist those resumes in order to determine who are the people we're going to call in to do an interview with. And then the third thing is we need to design the questions that we're going to actually ask. So what I'm going to do is basically walk through how this is done and talk about the process that we used as we were building this. So first thing here is creating a job description. So I'm going to pick that as my prompt. And now the hiring helper is going to respond. Now, essentially, the prompts that you saw at the beginning are the common things that you would ask that assistant. You can ask the assistant anything, right? But those prompts that I got just by clicking it allows us to the things that are common. We can have come through very quickly. The second benefit of those is you can actually give it instructions on how to follow up with specific types of prompts. Obviously, you couldn't really do that if you just let people ask anything, because your instructions would be super long dealing with every possible query. But here I only have three common questions, so I can set up instructions as to how do you follow up. And essentially I said, well, if we're going to create a job description, then here are the things that we need to know. We need to know the job title, we need to know the key duties, etc. So we have all of those. And the second thing that I put in here is to note that there are company policies. And the company policy relevant to this one is that all job descriptions must be approved by the head of the relevant department. So it's going to remind the person at the beginning that, and then at the end, I can draft an email to send off the job description, and it's going to send it to my department head. So my example job description here is going to be the job description is for an IT director responsible for security, cloud. The job is hybrid. Office. And I think that's probably good. All right, so I've given it the role, and now it's going to create my job description. So in terms of what...
sorry, Arlo, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, this is one of the fascinating things where with that few commands, that's one of the reasons with the creative writing piece of this, it gives you a draft that is pretty accurate in many cases from just that simple information.
It gives you a great draft, and I'm not going to or actually for any of these things you can in fact make sure that it adds or removes based on what you're saying. One of the things that I'm going to add here, because I forgot to say it, is that the budget, the responsibilities include budgeting, right? So it'll go back and add that in. Because as we looked over these requirements, I noticed that I had forgotten a very important part of this job description, and it's going to give me a revised draft. So as you can see, it's giving me this very quickly. It's going to do this for basically any job position that I ask. The next thing that I'm going to do, because it reminded me. And it's reminded me again, it wants to make a draft for my department head approval. I'm going to ask it who needs to approve. And one of the pieces of knowledge that it has is the organization chart for the company. So it can look at our organization chart and determine who needs to approve this. So it's now searching its knowledge base, tells me who it is who needs to approve this, and it's offering to send an email to our technology director. And I can just click this off, and it'll create my email. So basically, this has done this has helped me with the entire process of creating a job description, which as an HR person, I would have probably a list of many of these requirements. Some of it I may not know because I'm an HR person. I am not an IT person, but I can get all of this done. Build this out very quickly. As you can see, I can do it in the course of a presentation, and then I can send it out.
And Arlo, are you working with the free version of Zapier?
Yes. Yes, that's actually important. You can use the free version of Zapier. You cannot use the free version of ChatGPT. This has to be done with either the professional version of ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. So it's affordable at the personal level, or the enterprise ChatGPT version. But the Zapier end is the free account. You have to build it. You have to make an account, but it is a free account to make.
Great.
All right, it's asking me for permissions, and I'll probably just move along if this, depending on how long this takes. But the next step, once we have, the email has been successfully sent out, and we can review the contents. It allows you to see what was sent out so that you can see exactly what's gone. This is this is what I have sent out to Emily to get her approval. So the next step in our hiring adventure is creating a job description. That's that one I've already done. The next thing that we're going to do is review the resume. So essentially, I've sent out my my job description. I've put out my ads. I've got responses. The next thing that I need to do is review the resumes that come in. So I've got, again, a conversation starter here. If I click that.
We should set the stage for this, Arlo. This is something that people hate. I mean, for good reason. You can get 100 resumes for easily if you post something, and 90% of them could just be totally waste of time. And you've got to sift through all of those. It's one of the most, I remember I talked about soul destroying tasks. That was one of them.
Yes. All right. So I'm now going to review my resumes. It's told me that it needs a couple of things, and they're both fairly reasonable. It needs to get the job description that we want to hire for. And it needs the resumes that it's assessing. But this, again, was set up as an instruction. So I am going to put both of those things in. Now, this actually has a total of 40 resumes that it's going to assess against this job description. The job description is that IT director position that we did in the last section, the resumes are resumes that we received. You can upload to ChatGPT up to 10 files at the same time, but if you zip them, it counts as a file. So essentially, we've zipped 40 resumes. It's going to go through and do the assessment. So the first thing it needs to do here is look at the job description and figure out what it needs, what people need to show in order to be a good candidate for this job description, for this job position. And then the second thing it's going to do is assess the resumes that it received, and it's going to give us a short list of good candidates. Now, when you're setting your GPTs up, you can actually tell it to provide less or more information when it's going through these steps. It's slower if it lists out all of this information like it's doing right now, but it also tends to do a better job because it's going through every single step as it prints these things out.
Yeah, I don't think we can stress that enough, Arlo, is when you get it to examine what it's doing, you reduce hallucinations and errors enormously. Yeah. Now, we were all watching the clock tick on this thing, but anybody who's ever reviewed resumes and spent the whole day and you get to the end of them, you can't remember which ones were which and how it all worked out. This is going through this list of resumes that got dropped on your desk in this amount of time.
Yes, and you only needed to do about 4 sentences of filler, Jim, and we've got we've got some responses.
I'm happy to serve.
Yes. Yeah, so it's going to do a sample, and then we can ask for a short list. But yes, it goes relatively quickly, and the speed with which it goes is also a function of how many other people are working.
Yeah. And these are the real things that are going to happen to you in terms of you will encounter slowdowns. You will encounter things that you have to restart. We're still early in the game with this software. And that's why, when I talk about finding things that we can do, and you'll get things like network errors. This will work if you go back and you regenerate and you go back into it. But these are going to be things where you want to make sure that you set expectations correctly with people you're working with.
Yes. So this will, we could go through this again, but I think we can just go on to our next use case.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to put in a new chat. So the third thing that I wanted to do in terms of being a hiring helper is...
So sorry, just bottom line for people out in the audience there, we could regenerate that. We've done this. We know it does work. You're going to hit these stumbles, and it'll produce for you a short list of candidates out of that whole list with some good criteria.
And it provides a list of the candidates as well as a few insights into why they were the particularly strong ones.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write interview questions.
And this came out of the idea that when people are doing interviews, you want them to use the standard questions, but you want them to be applicable to that candidate. And so, this was this typically doesn't happen enough. In my notes to this, I said people wing it, and that's you don't get a decision making that is structured in any way. Okay.
I need to get my job description. Take me 1 second. All right, so when we're creating the interview questions, they should match the job description, so the assistant knows to ask for that. And it will also create an interview assessment form as well. And here, most of what I want to show you is we've seen it already come out with information based on files. So this is saying how it's going to how it's going to design the assessment form. This basically is going to create a form where where each question is set up on its own row, and you can assess the answers, and you can assess it against specific criteria. And it's going to create some sample questions. One thing that I do want to show you here is it can also, you can also set it up so that it knows what questions meet your company's criteria and what questions don't. So for instance, if I ask it to add a question on when the person graduated from high school, which is possible for someone not to think that this is a worry, but if you're assessing, how old people are, that can be that might fly in the face of what you're supposed to be asking. So we've got hiring policies as a document in our knowledge, and our hiring helper knows that this is not a question that is allowed. So you can have it actually, you can have your assistant understand what your policies are and make sure that people don't accidentally get themselves in hot water by having an interview question that is inappropriate. And then we have we can create all of this stuff and export the rubric. So this is basically our first example, is our hiring helper. I wanted to very quickly look at our employee helper. I think we'll just probably look at two things with that. One is for our employee helper, this is for people who are already employees, and essentially the goal here is to have all of your documentation so that people aren't emailing HR with questions that are in the FAQ and they could find out. But we have so many different documentations. So what we've done here is ChatGPT is actually pretty easy to put onto a website. So we've actually made a portal, and we have this. All this is a skin on top of our ChatGPT. I've used a tool called Chatbase if you're interested in looking at that. And basically, this is just just my HR assistant, and I can ask it questions, but it is in a much more friendly format, so you don't have to actually have everybody sign into ChatGPT every time they do that. So I'm just going to say, do we get Easter Monday off work, right? So just a question that an employee would want, and you can ask through the chatbot, and it, again, it looks through its knowledge and knows what days we get off, what days we don't. So you can have your assistant who can answer all sorts of questions and answer it as flexibly as we've seen ChatGPT do as well. So the interface is very interesting, that you can just slot it onto your website. And the second thing that I wanted to show is a capability that is just comes baked into ChatGPT, but I think is really powerful for any company that either has multiple offices worldwide or has people who are employed for whom English is their second language, which is, lots of companies. This the interface in which you, the language in which you talk to ChatGPT is the language that it responds. So it doesn't need to look at documents that are in the same language, which means that you can have one source of truth, and no matter what language people come to you with, they can get the answer. So if you have employees for whom English is their second language, they aren't going to misunderstand a policy because it's written in a language that isn't their first language. So I'm just going to show you this. So I'm going to ask the same question, put it in a language that I don't understand. Oh, that would not be the right line. This is what I wanted to translate. So I'm asking the same question. It's going to give me Spanish. So if I ask this in Spanish, ChatGPT is going to give me a response. I'm going to go back into my other interface so that I can confirm this. All right, so if I ask it a question in Spanish, and I've just moved this back into this direct interface because it was giving me a little bit of a problem there. The trouble with live demos.
But again, this is part of, as you're introducing these things, if you're doing experiments, this is why you want to turn these into experimental projects and make sure that people understand that there are going to be blips. There'd be nothing worse than trying to present this as a fully baked solution and then finding out that there were going to be issues. But that's part of what you have to adapt to.
Okay. Yes, so it's giving me problems on this one, which was, again, working brilliantly 10 minutes ago.
Yep. Story of live demos in there.
Yep.
That's great. But again, the trick is for this is to actually go through and start to find these things that you can develop and work through them, test them out. We're still early, and there are going to be these blips. There are going to be things that it doesn't do well, but not that it doesn't do well, but that it should be supervised for and worked with. But those are the things that you'll find that over time, I'm regularly using some facilities we built that save me enormous amounts of time. And we haven't talked about a lot of those meeting minutes and things like that just you can go through a whole hour-long meeting and get your action items and your meeting minutes done in no time. The trick is to find these little things and start to work with them, start to understand how they work. We've had some questions, Arlo. Can we just give a couple? The one of them we talked about. Do you need ChatGPT 4? I'm just trying to just make sure I've got the things.
Yes, you need ChatGPT 4. So you need the paid version or the enterprise version. But again, for the actions, the free Zapier account is all that you need.
Yeah, and you have to watch for some of these things in terms of I don't know what there's some goof it because we've done the Spanish thing a number of times that worked just perfectly. So never get yourself into a situation where you're going to be embarrassed by an error on this, because it will occasionally do that. But again, and you have to evaluate that. If somebody asks in Spanish and they get answered in English, and what's the consequences of that? Is that going to be terrible? Then you may not want to use this app. If it's going to be one of those things that just says 99% of the time it works, you're happy with that, you're good. Somebody asked, can we get the slides? Of course, yep. We'll get those to you. Even on this, though, we're using ChatGPT 4. You can use other versions. You can't package this as well, but there are you can use other versions, and you can do some of these things. I've sorted resumes with just the Microsoft GPT in built into the browser. It's ChatGPT. I haven't tried it in Claude or which is the Anthropic version yet, but some of these things work better in other ways. I found ChatGPT is the best at writing so far of all of the models, but that's something that people can take into account. The privacy, people were asking about question about privacy and the data, and I think that's you can go through. It won't, if you don't want it to remember the conversations. If you can go into your settings and hit it's probably, you go to privacy settings and beta. It's settings in beta and data controls. You can actually say, don't remember this conversation. The thing you lose, though, is it won't remember so you can't keep your list of conversations on the left-hand side, which is handy. So, but if you want to keep your data safe and you're really worried about that, you can do it one at a time.
And you can actually set that on an assistant by assistant basis as well. So you can, you can set it so that particular assistants don't remember and particular assistants do. But again, with the impact that ChatGPT will be reading your data, including it in what they do or not.
Right. Okay. We're just a little over time, but I think it was well worth it. Thank you for Arlo for doing this. Thanks to Don for his presentation from Gartner. Thank to all of you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this. We wanted to create these smaller and more intimate, interactive sessions that allow you to get some more interaction with us and to find out some things that are new. Our aim is to give you a real world info and find out what's happening in companies of all shapes and sizes. And a reminder, though, we also take suggestions from you. So if you've got a story or something we should be following up on, or something we should be looking at, or an idea that you want to there, my contact details, you'll get them in the email thank you email from there. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. We love your feedback, and we read it all, and we try to make better programming from it. Other ways to keep up, please listen to my podcast, #Trending, where we do stories on analytics and AI every day, 5 days a week. We do short news stories, and on the weekend we do an in-depth interview with people who are talking about fascinating things, much of it often from these days, no surprising, dealing with AI and analytics, but also a number of other topics that we cover. And of course, if you're interested in AI, get subscribed to our AI newsletter and watch the pages of IT World Canada, because you'll see a lot of things written on AI for business just like yours. So thanks to our presenters, and thanks to you for coming out. Look forward to big things in 2024. Our first event of the year is going to be Technicity Canada on February 29th. Mark your calendar. We'll be talking about a lot of stuff that's happening in government, not just in civic government, but in the provincial governments and federal government as well, and a lot of solutions that are being applied there. And also the relationship of businesses to those governments. So a good thing to check out. And our next Analytics Unleashed will be in the first quarter of 2024. We'll announce the date soon. Watch for it. From all of us at IT World Canada, thank you for coming out. We wish you, everyone, a happy holiday season and a wonderful new year. Thanks a lot. See you soon.